Hello, my name is Darren Chen. I'm with Evolution 1079 Altering Radio. Today I'm bringing you to Evil Lounge, and we got to talk with Clara Tong regarding private tutoring. Now, this is not private tutoring as in here at the school or by asking another teacher to help you. This is individual one-on-one out of school tutoring that essentially you pay money for. I got to ask her a little bit on the business side of it, as well as what it's like being a private tutor. Into everything. And, can I ask, what's your background in the education system?
Well, I studied education for my second degree, and I taught for 3 years in China because there was not a lot of jobs here in Vancouver at that time. When I came back to Vancouver, I decided to do full-time tutoring because that was what was available. And right now, business has built up to a point where I don't think that I would go back to teaching.
And you said, and so you just done the 3 years of teaching outside of Canada?
Correct.
And so, and before a little bit more on that, so that means if you're teaching overseas, you have to speak the language there, or?
No, they taught, I taught at an international school where the curriculum was in English, but the students were from different countries around the world.
And what sort of, courses that you specialize in?
I teach math, physics, and chemistry.
And those also transfer over to tutoring?
Yeah. Actually, when I was a teacher, I taught a multitude of subjects, including math and chemistry, but also cooking, ESL, creative writing, geography,
just absolutely
social
everything.
Studies, Canadian studies. The list goes on.
So essentially almost like the entire board.
Yes, because when you're a teacher, a lot of the time you don't get to teach the same course twice. You just teach whatever they need you to teach at that moment.
But for those tutorings like chemistry, math, and what was the other one?
Physics, yep.
Is there a reason that you teach those over? Are you just more familiar with them?
There's a lot of demand for math tutors, as you might imagine. And since my background is in chemistry, I teach that. And there's also a demand for physics, so I picked that one up as well.
I wonder if it has to do with the amount of Asians we have here.
You know what? Actually, here in Vancouver, my clientele this year is mostly Caucasian.
Generally, because at least from what I know, the Asians just like math, sciences, generally never English. But anyways, going on from that, let's not get into that subject. All right. What are the main things that you like? What made you want to stay in the tutoring versus, I guess, full-time teaching?
Well, as I said, this is something that I did fall into and decided to stay in. I did not prepare an answer to this question, so I gotta think. Well, I definitely saw a purpose in what I was doing. I have seen a lot of students' lives transformed because initially they weren't able to do math and they managed to get enough percentage points to get into the next stage of life.
And speaking of next stage of life, would that mean a lot of your students are generally from the high school level or university?
I tutor high school students, and sometimes they need certain math courses to get into certain programs. So if initially they're not able to do well in those classes, but after help they're able to do that, lives can be said to be transformed.
And so how does that actually work how does the tutoring actually work? Or do you do any preparation or?
Well, usually I meet with the students and I formulate a plan for them by looking at what they're good at and what they need help with. So for me, it's a long-term plan that I have in mind, and the short-term questions that they ask me just work towards this long-term goal.
And And since a lot of for at least for someone like me, I'm always just looking straight for the answer. But do you have to generally go step by step by step?
It depends on the student. So there are some students where you need to tell them every single step from 1 through 10 for them to understand, and some you just tell them 1, 5, 7 and they understand.
But from your work, most students, do they eventually get it by the end and after?
I mean, if the gap between what they have and what they need is not too big, then they get it.
And speaking of that gap, has there ever been like things that you look, I guess, review with your students that you wonder, I never had this in my grade. Should they be doing this? Or?
Well, I'm pretty familiar with the curriculum because I've had over 140 students taking the same courses, so I do know what is going on, and generally the teachers just stick to the curriculum.
And it's generally, you're generally familiar. It's like the same stuff you'd have generally done back in high school.
Not all of it is the same. Well, actually, chemistry and physics they never change, which is great. Sometimes the math curriculum gets reordered, but I wouldn't say it's anything new. Nothing that I haven't learned in high school.
And reordering anything. How does your day actually structured? How does it actually work?
Okay, well, when I wake up, I unfortunately have a habit of looking at my phone, and sometimes I will have text messages from people, either they're canceling or they have an emergency or they have a question for me. I usually just ignore that until about 9 o'clock, and then I reply to messages and I update the bookkeeping, do the scheduling. Sometimes I have morning students, so I go do one section there, and then usually the high school students will start from between 3:30 and 4:15, and then it goes on until about 9 p.m.
And would you say 9 p.m. is your general cutoff point?
Yes, because students need to go to sleep. However, I mean, last week I had somebody with an emergency, and she really wanted help even if it was after 9 p.m. So I went home and FaceTimed her, and that's how we did the lesson.
And and I assume that's just like one of those very rare cases.
That was pretty rare, yeah.
Is there like an unwritten word that there's a 9 p.m. cutoff time?
I think it's an unwritten word because generally, I think the parents don't want people at their house late on a weeknight.
And do you have ever trouble like getting to students in Vancouver, given the traffic that we have here?
My strategy has always been to go out to the west side. I live in East Van. Go out to the west side and stay out there until it's 9 p.m. and then there was no traffic coming back home.
But what about going?
Going there, sometimes it can be heavy in traffic, but heading west is still better than heading east.
All right. Just got a few more questions, and then we'll be wrapping this up on it. So, how much do you enjoy, I guess the less early morning schedule in comparison to, I guess, your later schedule?
Well, considering that I'm not a morning person, this works well for me. So I do all the errands and chores, and I have my personal time during the day. So it's just a reverse of what somebody doing a 9 to 5 would have. During the day, there's not as much traffic, so if you want to go grocery shopping, it's not as crowded.
And so for your clients, how do they generally find you? Or do you go trying to find them?
A bit of both. This year, I've had a lot of word of mouth students. They tell their friends about me, and I end up having them as clients as well. During the summer, it's a little bit slower, so I do have to go out and post on Craigslist or post flyers or ask other people if they know somebody taking summer school.
And do you actually, aside from like those summer school students who might be looking for additional help, have you ever decided to teach summer school over? or no?
No, I have not.
And so it is pretty much very much a slowdown though, and just a lot of more marketing in the summer versus I guess.
It depends on the summer. Like 2 years ago, it was pretty busy, almost as busy as the regular year, and then this past summer was pretty slow.
All right, that's all the time we're gonna have for today for Evil Lounge. Thanks for joining me today, Claire.
Thank you for having me.
Now that's just Clara's story on her adventure of entering in the private tutoring and what's it like being a private tutor for individual students here in Vancouver. Well, there's many more stories. That's all the time we're going to have for today. Anyways, my name's Darren Chen with Evolution 1079 Ultra Ring Radio, and this was the Evil Lounge.